A digital version of our debrief today. Thrilled to be joined by Blake Evans, the elections director at the Georgia Secretary of State's office. Obviously, on election day, Blake, we know that so many people have so many questions, but let's start before election day. Early voting went for a few weeks leading up to today, and you got a statewide average just about 9% when we were checking your website for that data. How did that go as opposed to what you were expecting?
So early voting from an election administration perspective went really well. We saw little to no lines for the entirety of the 3 week period. We had weekend voting also on 2 Saturdays, and then we had a few counties that were open on Sundays. But it went really well. Very little to no issues across the state. We have 159 counties that are running the election. Then we also have, in addition to our statewide public service commissioner special election, we also have many counties that are running their local elections for their municipalities that are in their counties. And so those have gone well so far from an election administration perspective, and we're looking forward to a very good election day.
When you look at elections like this one, and election years like this one, where there's not something like the governor's race on the ballot like there will be next year in 2026, how does that kind of tamper your expectations as far as that voter turnout goes and how you all prepare from the Secretary of State side of things?
So, from the election administration standpoint, we prepare in many ways the same. We treat it with just as much seriousness as any election that we're running. We want to make sure that every single election that we run is fair and lawful, and that eligible voters have the ability to vote in the election if they choose to do so. And we see a little bit lower turnout in odd year elections than what we do the even year elections. But these elections are extremely important. And so we want to make sure that when people show up to vote, they get the right ballot. That people, when they show up to vote on election day, they vote without issues at their polling locations. And we want to make sure the experience is as smooth as possible for our voters, and that the elections are conducted as fairly and lawfully as possible.
A lot of times when folks like you and I talk and do interviews like this, or we put it on TV, we say that, right? That this election is just as important as the other one. When we look at the voter turnout numbers, we see that a lot of people don't understand why that's the case. What would your case be to that for people as to, hey, there may not be a governor's race on the ballot, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't get out there and vote?
Well, the people that represent you at a local level are extremely important to your everyday life, and then also statewide. So regardless of whether you live in a city or whether you live out in the county somewhere, you still have something to vote on this time around. And so we have our statewide public service commissioner special election going on for 2 seats, and so that's all across the state. So every single eligible voter in the state that was registered by the voter registration deadline is eligible to vote in that election. And so, with today being election day, it's the last day to vote, but we also just had 3 weeks of early voting. And so, everybody in the state has something to vote on.
As you look at that election day process, in the middle of it right now, what does that look like once polls close? How do your folks go about then making sure results come out in a timely manner and also as secure as possible?
Yeah, well, just from an election day perspective as a whole, I know that many voters this morning, as they were getting ready to vote and preparing to go to their election day locations, were checking their My Voter page to figure out where their election day polling location was. And then throughout the day, of course, voting has been held, and polls will close at 7 p.m. And then once that starts, we expect that we'll report results quickly. Our county election officials have done a good job along with our legislature putting processes in place so that election results can be reported quickly here in our state. Last year, a law passed requiring that all absentee ballots that were received by yesterday, as well as all early voting results from the 3 weeks of early voting. Uh, the requirement is that all those results get posted by 8 p.m. on election night. So within 1 hour of polls closing at 7 o'clock later today, uh, those early voting results, along with the majority of the absentee ballots, those will be posted. And so, along with that, will also come the election day results that'll start coming in shortly after polls close. Of course, it takes time for the poll workers to close down their polls and also get those results back to their local elections office. But we'll start seeing those come in around 7:15 in some cases, 7:30 in some cases, and then for polling locations that are a little bit further out from their county election offices, it may take till 8 o'clock, 8:30. But poll workers do a really good job of closing down the polls, making sure the proper paperwork is done, making sure the proper chain of custody forms are done, and getting those results reported as quickly as possible.
Do you have any hopes or expectations as to what that turnout would be for it to be something where you feel good about the voter participation in an odd year like this one?
So I try not to guess too much on the voter turnout, but what we want to make sure is that every single voter who wants to vote is able to do so in a lawful and in a fair way, and that they have a very convenient process that they get to go through. That means short wait times. Our legislature has done a really good job of putting laws in place that limit any lines that we see. We had 3 weeks of early voting, and we saw virtually no lines the entirety of the time. Even in, if you look back in high turnout elections in 2022 and 2024 on election day, we saw wait times of on average 2 minutes. And those were very high turnout election days in elections. And so we want to make sure that any voter that wants to show up to vote is able to do so in a convenient and a fair and a lawful way. And so that's what we're, as election officials, most concerned with.
If someone is watching this right now, there's a few hours till polls close, and they spark something, oh, you know what? I do want to go vote. What do they need to know, or where do they need to go to see the resources they need to have to be able to understand this is where you need to go, this is what you need to bring with you?
So I would encourage all the voters that are getting ready to go vote that they prepare by going to their My Voter page. That's mvp.sos.ga.gov, and they can enter in some information there, and they can see their sample ballots, and they can also see their election day polling location, and so they can see exactly where they need to go vote, as well as exactly what's going to be on their ballot to make sure that they're prepared, so that when they show up to vote, it'll be a very smooth process. They'll know what to expect, and they will not have any issues.
And conveniently at the WTOC website, we've got that election center page where you have all those resources immediately linked. Folks, if you're going to look for that right now. Blake, appreciate your time. Good luck with the rest of the election season.
Absolutely. Thank you.